They're not fixed, they just do tend to roll some extraordinary numbers. We got 4 at 3 for the 4 cruisers. Oh man alive, those dice are just fantastic. Okay, we are back. It is video number 3, turn number 6 of our anniversary playthrough with the 42 setup and our 4-turn game plan. If you don't know what that is, go back to video number 1 and it's all explained there. But we're on with Japan. They've got 2 minutes of rash thinking time. They can make a maximum of 4 attacks per round, buying middling to expensive equipment and an aggression rating of 2, which is quite a low aggression. It's sort of protecting your own core areas, and if you want to attack, then by all means be my guest. Before we get going, may I mention that I make these videos in aid of a charity called Cure Parkinson's. You can guess what they're trying to do. There's a link to them below this video, one in the About section on the channel page. If you happen to have a spare dollar, euro, yen, yak, or British pound you can send to them, I'm sure they'd appreciate it. So, with our 2 minutes of rash thinking time, the equipment values for the Japanese here is middling to expensive. We're fulfilling that by getting 1 cruiser, 1 destroyer, a tank, some artillery and 3 infantry. Though they are the cheaper units, we have to balance up what we can get onto our transport ships over there in Japan Island, because that's our main factory. We hope to be grabbing this one in India this time round. It's the only attack we're going to be making as Japan. So let's just stop all our waffling and get ourselves rocking and rolling with this attack. Bring the dice tray into where we can see it. The Brits have got 1 anti-aircraft gun. Let me just move myself into space. 1 anti-aircraft gun that can attack all of these planes rushing in. 1 second while I just have a quick cough. That's better. The anti-aircraft gun can attack all the planes that are rolling in this version. It's not one of those ones like in Global where they can only attack a maximum of 3 planes per gun. So we've got 4 dice for the 4 planes rolling in, all trying to hit at once with our lucky dice and all missing. That is still in shot nicely. So that anti-aircraft gun is done with for the moment, and we can get on with this bigger Japanese attack coming in. They have got their 2 bombers that roll in at 4s, and they have 2 fighters that roll in at 3s on the red dice, and 3 tanks as well that all roll in at 3s, hoping for 1 massive hit first up. And it's fairly good. There's 3 hits out of that, either tanks or fighters, so 3 off the Brits straight away. They're probably going to take that on those 3 infantry guys straight up. And there's also 2 infantry, 1 artillery. So the infantry artillery combination goes in at 2s, and the 1 infantry on his own goes in naked at 1s. I beg your pardon, we've actually got 3 infantry guys there. So we also have the 1 infantry artillery combinations. They will go in at 2s, and we've got the naked infantry rolling in at 1s. So 2s and 1s. And no more hits, just the 3 off the Brits first time round. The Brits now will roll in their 1 Fajita at a 4 in defence, scores 1 hit. We've then got 6 dice for the infantry artillery combinations. We can do that all with red dice, why not indeed, or defending at 2s. And scoring a massive 3 hits off of the Japanese forces. That's 4 in total off of Japan, which will be 1, 2, 3, 4. All their cheap ground units have been wiped out in 1 foul swoop. But I think Japan are still hopeful that they can carry through with this attack and get into India. If they get India, I don't see the Brits or the Allied getting India back under any kind of control for 2 or 3 turns. It might be a game-changing move, this, by Japan. We hope, as the Japanese player, it's going to be a game-changing move. So we get our 2 bombers going in at 4s and our 2 fighters going in at 3s, and then 3 tanks all rolling in at 3s as well, looking to score 4 hits. While Japan's aggression rating is fairly low, looking to protect their cause, you can still make attacks, and this attack is definitely on, and you're protecting your areas that you've already established by getting that factory off your doorstep and perhaps using it ourselves later on. So 4s and 3s, that is a monster of a hit. 1, 2, that was 3, 4. The Brits have absolutely been wiped out there in India. I think that's pretty damn cool. There's no way that Brits can do enough damage to Japan to stop us from rolling in. It's just now a matter of how expensive the damage comes back by the Brits. 1 fighter at 4 and the 3 artilleries all at 2s. Wowee. And it's pretty good actually. That's 3 hits off of Japan. They can't take it all on the tanks because obviously they then cannot take India itself. So they're going to lose 2 expensive planes. I think I'm fairly happy as the Japanese player to lose 2 tanks from 2 of those hits and 1 fighter. I think that's reasonable. I was double thinking myself there a little bit too much, but that all now disappears. And grab a token. India now falls into Japanese hands. I'll tidy all this up in a minute and get all the IPC sorted out as well. And just point out what we're doing as for the rest of the non-com moves for Japan. They're going to be, let me just move myself around a little bit. They're going to be moving these guys from Qinghai down here into Xikang, just to start getting enough units around this area. We don't think the Russians are going to come back this way. There's no way that's going to happen. But we're going to be using our transport ships. We've got 1, 2, 3 transport ships up here. Start bringing guys down through 61 into 50, load up the Philippines, and potentially attack down here into Australia, grab some of these more IPCs down from this way, perhaps to get New Guinea back under our Japanese sphere of influence as well. And that'll be it for Japan's turn. I shall rush through everybody else, all the other players' turns, and come back to you with an after-action report using their values as prescribed on their behaviour sheets. And I'll see you in about 2 seconds for you, about an hour for me. Okay, I tell a lie, I'm good at that. It's actually only a couple of minutes after the turn has been completed. Want to bring you just a little bit of an insert here before we get on with the rest of the round. Apart from me making a little mistake over here in India, when I rolled those bombers in versus the anti-aircraft gun, I should have rolled 2 + 2 dice, because in this version the anti-aircraft gun target fighters or bombers, but as it was, everybody missed, so no foul, no harm. It's just me being a bit of a numpty there. The bombers themselves, they came from Fence Indochina. 1, 2, they've gone back 3, 4, 5 and landed into East Indies, obviously threatening this Australian coast here, with the extra units that have now come down non-com by the Japanese forces here. Philippines now filling up nicely. The Americans can't reach them. This guy here in his little transport boat, the American one here, is going to be a little bit unhappy with this presence next door to him. He's going to be running away rather quickly. But what I wanted to point out, he says waffling like a waffly thing in waffles, is this up here into middle of Western or Eastern Europe, shall I say, Western Russia, Eastern Europe, because whilst the Soviets have got a cheap and nasty buy of infantry artillery, there's a whole bunch of them there with their 23 IPCs they got at the moment. There is an attack on into Belarus. The Soviets can muster 9 infantry, 5 artillery, a couple of tanks and a fighter, versus just, I think it's 4 infantry, 3 artillery, couple of planes there. The Soviets now starting to feel emboldened by the attack the Brits made up into Karelia and the weakness of this German supply line, with their factory being bombed in Germany time after time after time. We think Soviets are coming forward. I just wanted to bring that to you as a little bit of a highlight. I won't roll the dice live on camera now. I'll get that attack done and bring you in a couple of seconds time the result of that attack into Belarus. I think whilst Japan are winning the Pacific fairly easily at the moment, the Allies are pushing back into the European side of the board. I see you in a second when that attack has been finalised. Well, that didn't take very long. It was a 2-round affair with the Soviet forces absolutely smashing the hell out of the Germans on that first roll. They lost about 4 infantry guys themselves to the Soviets. They are now into Belarus, big and strong. They've reinforced a couple of guys into Karelia in that factory up there, which was retaken by the Brits last turn. A lot of guys here into Caucasus. Could they come back down and try and liberate this Indian factory for the UK? It's suddenly a much brighter picture for the Allied forces than I was thinking just 10 minutes ago. So that is the end of the Soviet turn. I will to everybody else off camera, and I will see you at the end of turn number 6. Okay, we've reached the end of turn number 6. It's honours even again on the British cities count. We've got 9 each with the fall of Calcutta to the Japanese. And following up from that, the rest of the turn really went out in a bit of a whimper for the Axis forces, and to some degree for the Allies as well. After the big attack from the Soviets into Belarus, all that Germany could do is really pull back from there. Though they are a semi-aggressive, skirmishy type of nation, they didn't have the units in place. Nothing was far enough forward to retake Belarus or Baltic states, and indeed they look quite weak all around here now. So they've had to wait a little bit, move some units into Ukraine, try to hold that place up. But that's not going to last very long. We don't think anymore, because the Soviets are quite strong down here with all the artillery pieces they got in place. They did make one attack, the Germans. They broke out from Sea Zone 5, which is up here the Scandinavian Sea, into the North Sea, with a couple of their submarines, taking on a British destroyer and a Soviet submarine, and were successful there temporarily, till the Brits decided, well, they've got Karelia sewn up now, the Soviets now in control of that, and enough buffer zone to not be too concerned, move their fleet and some of the guys that are in Karelia, a couple of tanks I believe it was, back into Norway, the fleet into the North Sea, Sea Zone 6, taking out that one remaining German submarine. And being a semi-aggressive power themselves now, or quite aggressive power now, the Brits have to make some kind of attack. They took 2 bombers into Germany itself, and once again the German anti-aircraft was useless. It's had 9 or 10 attacks done onto Germany and only managed to knock out 1 plane thus far. The Brits scored 8 damage into there. The Americans followed it up on their turn. There's now 11 IPCs of damage, really hurting the Axis economy, or Germany's Axis economy. But also, we've got some damage on the Japanese factory as well. More of that in a moment. There was no more attacks that the Brits could feasibly make that would look like being a reasonably thought out affair by the absent British player. And we went on to the Italian turn. Them again, they're supposed to be aggressive, but they can't be aggressive without the units in place and with all these Americans on their doorstep. But we are slightly worried as the American player with all this fleet now. We've got quite a few Italian ships that can come through the Straits of Gibraltar and potentially hit Sea Zone 12, where the Americans have been using that as their dropping off point, building up into Morocco, Algeria. So we've got to think a little bit carefully about how that's going to work out in the next couple of rounds. Maybe even the next round, there might be an Italian hit onto there, now that they can reach all their fleet through there in one move. America Land themselves, they bought a couple of tanks and 1 more transport ship to help out the European side of the map. But on their more expensive purchases, they got themselves 1 big booming battleship, which is over there joining up off of San Francisco to join up with this Hawaiian fleet later on. This fleet is moved all the way from San Francisco into the Hawaiian Sea zone. Really, from there it can stretch many different ways, including threatening these guys in the Philippines, threatening to take Iwo Jima back again, protecting New Guinea, etc. So it's a move that the Japanese have to think very hard about when it comes around to their turn. In their 2 minutes of rash thinking time, Japan have got a lot of thinking to do very quickly. Japan's factory, as I mentioned before, has been hit by 2 American bombers. Once the bombers have finished hitting that Japanese factory, part themselves into Buryatia, where there's a conglomeration now of Soviet forces up there to withstand any kind of reprisal from the Manchurian crew. So I think that'll be it for turn number 6, and we'll be on with Japan. We have to think very hard, very quickly with their 2 minutes of rash thinking time, what they do. I think building up some forces into India is a good idea, but this American fleet is really going to cause them a few headaches now as to how aggressive they want to be or can be down towards the rest of this South Pacific and Australia, etc. I'll see you on turn number 7 in a minute anyway. Okay, we're back in turn number 7, on with Japan, the power we are following throughout this playthrough. And we've got our 2 minutes of rash thinking time. We're getting rid of 6 of the IPC damage done by those nasty Americans to our beautiful factory. Getting 3 artillery pieces. They go into India, our factory we grabbed last time round. And a fighter to replace the 1 fighter that was lost in that attack on that factory. And 1 cruiser that will go up into Sea Zone 62 around the Japanese island, help protect the waters round there. We are declaring 1 attack. It's going to be, as I muted beforehand, into Australia here. We've got 2 bombers can fly in, 1, 2, 3, hit that island and get themselves back into East Indies afterwards. We've got infantry artillery, a combination of 4 units that are going to come down on 2 transport ships via Sea Zone 48 into Sea Zone 39, accompanied by the battleship and the cruiser. That can get into there, 1 big massive attack. We'll move this out of the way. Got my dice preset already to rock and roll, and start shaking these Japanese guys out of the sky with our anti-aircraft gun. They roll in at once with lucky dice. Hopefully they're still lucky. We were using these last night in a different game, and they kept rolling 1. So I'm pretty sure there's no luck left in the lucky dice at the moment. They've knocked out 1 of the bombers. Oh, would you Adam and Eve it? Okay, they're still lucky. Not for the Japanese player. That bomber is now lost and gone. So in the attack now from the sea units, we've got 1 at 4 from the bombarding battleship, 1 at 3 from the bombarding cruiser. There's just 3 British guys in there trying to withstand this attack, and they have both missed. Is this a bridge too far? We're starting to wonder. 1 bomber left now, goes in at 4 for Japan. It scores 1 hit. That's 1 of these British guys down. And they've got a combination of infantry and artillery. It's 4 dice at 2s. Get the other 2 guys knocked out if we can. And they have all missed as well. That is a bit of a disaster for Japan, depending on how much gets knocked back by these 3 British guys here. We'll give them lucky dice again, because they seem to be holding out. I didn't think we'd run out of luck in them, but we're going to find out with 3 guys rolling in at 2s and scoring just the 1 hit. So, yeah, honours even. I think Japan will be happy enough with that. We go into round 2 of the combat now. Anti-aircraft gun doesn't fire, bombardment doesn't happen, but there 1 bombist, we use the same dice, goes in at a 4 and misses this time round. The 3 invading ground guys all go in at 2s. And whoa, great hit there. Absolutely smashed the Brits out of there. Australia will fall because the Brits can only reply with 2 dice at 2s and score 1 more hit. That's the other Japanese infantry running out of there. And we're going to get these 2 artillery pieces loading themselves into Australia, along with a roundel. Find 1. Yep, roundel just down there. Australia has fallen. I'll sort out the IPC screen to Japan in a minute. We're going to be looking at the non-coms, because I've already pre-thought those out as well, because I'm efficient like a German washing machine. We have got this 1 fighter from French Indochina. It's going to go 1, 2, 3, land in Manila or Philippine Islands. Help support that, because there's just 2 guys left in there at the moment, and they could be threatened by a skirmishy, because that's what America are at the moment, a skirmishy American fleet. But if we take 1 of these transport ships that's up here in Sea Zone 62, get a tank onto there and an infantry, we can reinforce the Philippines, I think, with too much weight that the Americans won't want to go in there. So that will all be done off camera. I'll sort it all out, and I'll get on with the European side of the battle, which is over in there. And we've mentioned before about how This is a much more tighter affair as far as the Axis are concerned. We believe that because the Baltic states and eastern Poland are now just wide open, that the Soviets are going to walk in there and just grab those IPCs and possibly have a bash at the Ukraine as well. That's looking quite vulnerable now. Germany got a lot of work to do, especially with all that damage that's been done to their factory in the last number of turns. So that'll do. I will see you at the end of turn number 7. Okay, we've reached the end of turn number 7, beginning of turn number 8. As you can see, Popper is highly enthused by the action that's been going on, not only on Axis and Allies, but on Wolfpack, a tremendous little hex encounter game that I've got on the go at the same time. I've had a little re-evaluation of really the whole of the Axis position during this game. It's been quite a revelation, I think, for me. The game's been flattering me. I thought I'd been playing the Japanese forces okay-ish, not particularly, just okay, but that's only really going by the number of markers that Japan have got all over China. Shanghai is empty of units, Hong Kong is empty of units, India have got a few units in there, but they're being not necessarily threatened, but balked by this multinational Soviet, British and American forces in Persia. Yes, India could come forward and have a little pop at them, but they've got their own worries there, because obviously the Soviets now are doing tremendously well, more of those in a minute. We just stick with the board in 2 halves because of this change that's taken place. Turn number 8 we'll be starting in a minute. Turn number 9 is when we can re-evaluate our policies, and looking just very quickly and quietly at the IPC counter up there, there's been a complete swap of the German and Soviet markers, an 8 swing, 4 either way, whatever you want to say. Germany are now down on 26 IPCs and have got some massive factory damage to pay off. Japan are still leading the chip numbers, but they've got factory damage to pay off. We'll look over at Europe now to explain what happened over there. We'll stay focused in, why not? The Soviets moved forward from Belarus into Baltic states, eastern Poland and into Ukraine. The Germans tried to smash back with a fairly large number of infantry and artillery from Poland into eastern Poland. They had, I think, perhaps a 3-2 advantage there, but the dice roll said no. It was absolutely horrible for Germany. They had to obey their own behaviours and do a skirmish, really, because the attack was left them at about a 50-50 or even a slight disadvantage after the units were rationalised after that first round of attack. So Germany are looking a little bit shaky on this front with the advance of all these Soviet forces. Joseph Stalin is absolutely screaming at Roosevelt and Churchill, saying, open that second front up on into France or even into Northern Europe, wherever you want to go to. And the Allied, I think, now are about to obey that kind request from Stalin, because the Brits smashed that factory again. That factory of Germany, they couldn't pay off all their damage last time round and still get a reasonable number of units into Germany itself. The Brits hit it again. It's now in flames. It's in tatters. So much so that the Americans took their bomber that was over there in the UK. That's flown all the way over to Yakut SSR to help the attack on the Japanese factory over there, because that's in flames as well. The British fleet moved their transport ships out of Sea Zone 6 backwards into Sea Zone 2 as a protective measure. Moved the main battle fleet down into Sea Zone, whatever it is down here, off of Morocco, Casablanca, whatever you want to say, to help protect the Americans that were there. So rather than the Italians moving forward and having a pop at the Americans with their bomber, they took the bomber to bomb the British factory, actually quite close with the anti-aircraft gun there, but it didn't work out. So the Brits have got a little bit of damage to pay off, but not too much. And so I think overall we're looking really at a turn 8 possible invasion of France or Normandy. We're not really sure whether it's going to, or Normandy, Northern Europe. We're not really sure it's going to happen, or it's going to be highly successful. But with 18 damage on the German factory before they start, and they're only generating 26 IPCs at the moment, Germany, I think any invasion into Northern Europe or into France is going to be devastating for the Axis cause. And once Germany get themselves completely weakened, America can obviously focus themselves entirely onto the Pacific and let the Brits and the Soviets do the mopping up job versus the German forces. So I think that really is a fairly quick but comprehensive view of the game. It has completely flummoxed me how all of a sudden what looked so good over here in the Pacific looks so bad. Obviously terrible planning by me, but obviously when you've got the behaviours that you're working with, Japan's rash 2 minutes of thinking time and America's rash thinking time and their aggression bringing them forward now to the Caroline Islands, they can land their bombers after hitting the Japanese islands in the Caroline Islands and help to repatriate Australia next time round, or have another pop at the Japanese factory there with 3 bombers this time round, trying to do even more damage to their economy. So I think really Axis forces are looking like they're in tatters. That we'll all find out when we get into turn number 8 shortly. Okay, it's a fresh day for me. We're on with Japan. I've got my 2 minutes of thinking time, which I've allotted to really looking at this fleet here in the Caroline Islands. Though we are a not highly aggressive nation, an aggression rating of 2 now as Japan, this fleet here I feel does represent a threat to our core, because as far as I'm concerned as the Japanese player, all of China is now a Japanese core. And if these guys from the Caroline Islands hop ship 1, 2 and start landing into Shanghai and Kwangtung, etc., they're going to start grabbing victory cities, and it's going to be difficult for the Axis forces to be able to get back into these places from the range they're at. It's not easy for America land to actually service these guys and keep pumping units into there, but they are a threat, a perceived threat by the Japanese nation. So enough of that waffle. We had 42 IPCs to spend. We can only mobilise 8 units into here without damage, and we had 8 damage on the factory itself. So we had to pay off some damage first, which has compromised what should have been a middly too expensive buy, having to get a cheap submarine rather than a cruiser, using the rest of that money just to pay off that factory damage there this time round. So we're going to make our attack without hardly any forethought, because it is me. We're going to move this one bomber from the East Indies, 1, 2, 3. It can attack the Caroline Islands and demonstrate a landing space 3 spaces later. We find a chip for it. And then we're going to bring this fleet down from here with our 4 cruisers, 1, 2, and 2 destroyers. I think America were perhaps a little bit dumb themselves, although they are on a rash thinking time player as well, in leaving that fleet there so exposed. It's not strong enough, especially when these guys here from Australia can also join them, 1, 2, and get one massive blow versus all this American transport ships and just 4 cruisers to protect them. We'll be taking our 2 transport ships non-com that way. We want to get more guys onto the Japanese island, or off the Japanese island rather, into Manchuria to start hitting these bombers, because these guys here are going to be a right pain later on if they keep on doing what the Americans and British have done to the German factory and wrecking that Axis economy on that side of the board. So it's enough of the waffling. We'll put the dice tray somewhere where we can see it and just roll this battle out. I don't think it's going to last very long. I should imagine that Japan are going to do this really inside 1 roll. That is the thought anyway. Americans are going, oh my God, what did we do that for? We've got 1 battleship at 4 and a bomber at 4. We roll those 2 in first and score 2 hits neatly with 2 dice. And then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We use red dice for these, for their cruisers. They'll go in at 3s and score just 1 more hit, but that's plenty enough. And then we got the 2 destroyers that go in at 2s, trying to finish things off. And we have done it in 1 roll. Obviously, the transport ships can't defend themselves. All those guys will go glug, glug, glug. And the guys on the Caroline Islands will be going, well, what are we doing here now? We're just way out of position. So, in reply from that, we're going to give the Americans our lucky dice, because when needs must, these guys do tend they're not fixed, they just do tend to mould some extraordinary numbers. We got 4 at 3 for the 4 cruisers. Oh man alive, those dice are just fantastic. They are just dice. Wow. So the battleship takes 1 hit, we can take 3 more off of these guys, and that gets righted at the end of combat, and everybody else gets smashed out of the way. Wowee, that is just superb. As I said to you, we're going to do some non-com moving, but it's just going to really be these 2 boats down here going that way, trying to get up north a bit toot sweet. We're not afraid of this American fleet anymore. Why should we be? That'll be the end of the extraordinary American roll on the Japanese turn. I'll do the rest of turn number 8, get back to you with an AAR, and then we will get on to the turn number 9 when we will re-roll all our values as per our 4-turn game plan revised. Okay, we finished off turn number 8. Now turn number 9, showing on the dice, says when we re-evaluate our behaviours for all our powers, and we sit once again on 9 frigid cities apiece because of the fall of France. More of that in a minute, because that was pretty spectacular. When we look at the this side of the map in isolation at the moment, Japan, as I mentioned, moved their transport ships up from Sea Zone 39, heading towards back towards their island, and moved their 1 or 2 guys down into Burma from Yunnan, trying to get some more guys into India just to bulk that place up. Americaland have pulled their fleet back from the Hawaiian Islands, leaving these guys on their own, same as the guys in Caroline Islands, and just trying to start rebuilding their navy here after that devastating roll by Japan first time round. Obviously, America's great reply from there. But it's not strong, their navy, and we have only reinforced it this time round with just 1 cruiser from the American buy. The bomber that was in the United States has flown over to Buryatia to go along with the 3 bombers that are already in that area. Those 3 bombed the Japanese factory again successfully. The anti-aircraft guns are absolutely useless at the moment, so obviously the bombers are really exploiting that on both sides of the map. And Japan have got their 1 transport ship now into Sea Zone 62, try and get some more guys into Manchuria to try to stymie that threat, as we mentioned earlier. Over in Europe, the Soviets moved forward into eastern Poland, building up a massive force in there. Germans didn't like that and made a skirmish as part of their behaviour. And it was a fairly even battle in there, reducing numbers down on both sides, but I think the Soviets got the best of it just by enough. But in the middle of Europe, this is where it all really kicked off. More factory damage done to the German factory. Again, the anti-aircraft gun entirely failing. And so the Germans, again, they've got economic problems, and now they've lost France. That's 12 IPCs swing, 6 away from them, 6 to the Brits. The Brits were, I wouldn't say big and brave. Germany had to move some of their troops from France into Germany to ship more units from Germany into Poland to hold up the Western Front. Britain exploited that. They got 4 transport ships in there. They loaded 8 units into France itself and lost only 2 versus the 5 Germans that were left in there trying to defend that place. It then left Italy with a major quandary. Did they try to attack France massively to get some money back into the Axis economy? If they did that, because of all the Americans that were left here in North Africa, and there was, I think it was 5 transport ships down here as well, it would leave Italy itself vulnerable. Operation Torch would have turned into that one massive raid, whatever it was called, after that. So Italy itself, supposed to be aggressive power, as much as we could manage, putting the bomber from, it was in Germany, and 4 infantry artillery into France itself, and they did an okayish job versus the Brits that were in there at the time, but eventually they did lose out after having to continue fighting till the last because of their behaviour numbers. And America, rather than hitting Italy itself, have come round the coast now and have reinforced France now with all their infantry artillery tanks. And this one token here represents this whole massive fleet there, which is sitting there in Sea Zone number 7, looking pretty safe and pretty threatening as well. The American buy was all apart from one cruiser for the Atlantic side of the map. I know that America really, really wanted to get more units into the Pacific, but the thinking from the higher authority, a little bit of a Casablanca conference between Eisenhower and Churchill, decided that if they can really finalise Europe itself, get as many units into France as they can, with this one big smash, a few guys there in Eastern United States to come over on the next couple of turns, it should result in the whole of Europe falling. That will leave the Allied forces one major city short of the projected win. So that's where we got to. Long explanation. Let me now just sit myself down and go through the changes which now occur as per our behaviours from our turn 9 adjustment. Okay, so I've readjusted all the values now for the powers that are involved in this, and Japan, they're going to have to get more expensive equipment. That's not going to be easy for them with the job that they've got, and even though they are the chip leader, I just think that Japan benefit from cheaper units, but the behaviour of this player is saying, nope, I'm going for more expensive. Soviet guys there, they're still continuing to skirmish a lot, and they're getting some middling and cheap equipment now. That's going to help them out, I think, in their push towards Berlin. Germany are the ones that I had to re-roll the dice for. They've got much more middly to expensive equipment now. That's not going to help them out in their cause. So it's all sort of looking rosy at the moment for the Allied powers. The UK, they're going to be skirmishing and getting middly and cheaper units. Now that's good for them. And Italy had to re-roll both dice. They got a 2 and a 2. They're protecting their cause, but somehow with expensive equipment. No idea how they're going to do that. Yeah, Italy, I think, are a lost cause. And the US, well, they have to move their equipment value up to an expensive, and I put even their EEC, because again, they got the same problem as Japan have got. So at least on that side of the board, both the powers there are suffering equally. But once Europe is sorted out up there, I'm sure that it's going to result in a fairly swift Allied victory. But how swift is just depends on how the dice rolls start going from now on in. So that's it. I will see you in turn number 9 on with Japan once I've had a little cup of tea. Okay, we're back on with turn number 9 on with Japan, and I must confess I spent more than their allocated 2 minutes of thinking time this time round. And I have mentioned in the rules, I said it before, sometimes even a rash player is just going to say, hang on a second, guys, I need more time to think about this. And we have done with Japan. More there in a second, though. I wanted to point out something with Germany. I've done them a small disservice here, really, with their explanation of their new behaviours. They had to re-roll their equipment dice. It's gone from I think it was a 5 to a 3. But their aggression had to make 2 steps towards a more aggressive status. They're now frown upon retreat. I don't see too many opportunities for Germany to attack anyway, but they're almost committing to fight to the last. And with the mess that they're in Europe, I can see Germany collapsing like a teenager's lie, whatever that would be. Let's get back onto Japan, though. Their purchases this time round, it has to be more expensive. That's what our behaviours say. And we paid off some factory damage. We've got 3 artillery pieces and a cruiser, a couple of tanks. We really wanted to get more infantry, but having to pay off factory damage is what's caused this problem. And the problem with their thinking time, which got exaggerated no end, was I was really, really tempted to bash the units up into Buryatia, knock out those Soviet soldiers and that American air wing. The problem being that the number of units we could get in there, it was a kind of a 50-50 battle when I worked all my numbers out. And I was figuring that should it go wrong, it does leave the whole of China just to be walked through initially by some Soviet soldiers. It was a hard one to decide. So instead, though, what the Japanese are going to do, even though it's not necessarily protecting their cause, it's helping the Axis cause here, is about facing this one massive fleet that's here, taking tank and 1 infantry guy on this transport ship, and that's going to go into the Hawaiian Islands with 1 guy on there and have a bash at Honolulu. Why not? Indeed, there's no one there protecting it. It's going to force the Americans' hand now, or the Allies' hand, to put loads of money on this side of the map. It might just help out Germany in the long run. That's about all we're going to be doing aggressively. We hardly need to show you any of the dice rolls there, but we can do with their bombardment. It's going to be one battleship out of 4 and one cruiser out of 3. And the cruiser scored a hit straight away. We then get a tank and an infantry. We have the tank on the black dice rolling in at a 3 and missing. Okay, so there's the infantry guy there. The 2 American guys that are there, they have one tank at a 3 and an infantry at a 2, black dice being the highest register. And they scored 1 hit, taking out the one Japanese infantry unit. So we now a little bit tighter here. So we're going to have a 3 versus a 3. We give Japan the red dice. We should give America the black dice, trying to take Honolulu. And they've knocked each other out. So nothing happens there. The island doesn't get invaded. Just up there. Infantry, artillery, infantry and tanks have both been removed from both sides there. I think it was a good move. It certainly still is forcing the hand of the American player, because this transport ship can nip off and get someone from somewhere else later on. There's a guy in the Solomon Islands going to be picked up and taken back across. So it's all good in my book, although I'm still munging over whether we should have made that attack up into Manchuria. But what's done is done, even with my extra thinking time. We're going to be taking the 2 guys here, or at least one of the guys here from Manila, and picking up a guy from Iwo Jima, no, from Okinawa, bringing him over into Manchuria, load these 2 guys on that transport ship across into Manchuria for an attack next time round, we think. That'll do for Japan. I will see you when we get the full AAR from that massive battle happening over in Europe. Okay, stop press news, hold the front page. Turn number 9 was an absolute ding-dong. Let's start talking about that in the AAR. Ignoring what happened over in the Pacific, we saw most of Japan's moves and non-com moves anyway. We start off with the Soviets. Those guys there in Poland and some guys from Baltic states had a little pop at Poland itself here, trying to get that one Vichy city there. Bit of a score draw. About 6 units got lost on either side from there. I think the Soviets are regretting slightly not carrying on through with that attack, not knowing what's going to happen after that, but the crystal ball time and so on and so forth. The Germans themselves, they had factory damage to pay off before they could put just 4 extra units into Germany, along with artillery infantry in there anyway, and trying to reinforce Germany itself with some of the guys from northwestern Europe moving backwards into Germany. I think they were trying to really invite the Brits to bash northwestern Europe this time round, but the Brits were, well, they used all of their 6 minutes of thinking time plus a little bit more, and decided in the end to take their fleet from Sea Zone 7 over the top 6 and into Sea Zone 5, the Scandinavian Sea, and bash Germany through the back door. It was a bit of an attritional affair as far as dice rolls were concerned. I'm glad we weren't playing North Africa with the supply rules that go into there, because we would have run out of money on both sides halfway through that battle. There were misses all over the place there, but the British bombers capitalised on hitting that area again and again and again. They were the main scorers for the Brits, and eventually Germany did capitulate. The Brits are fairly strong in there now, but I think it's 5 artillery pieces and 3 tanks. Taking some of the guys obviously from the UK, one guy from Norway got involved in that attack, and the guys from France came through as well. So it was a bit of a big cluster there, and I think a fairly justified attack. As it turned out, a little bit easier than we first thought it was going to be. Brits landed their bombers in France, quite importantly landing in France, because they can reach India, where this last Axis forces, Japan, are in there at the moment, perhaps having a pop at Persia. I think the Soviets are slightly annoyed with the Brits getting into Germany first, taking all those IPCs. Soviets could use that down here faster than the Brits could use it over there to come through, but needs must. The Soviets are a little bit tardy there. The Brits capitalised on that. The big surprise for me was Italy. They decided in their 2 minutes of rash thinking time to pop an infantry and artillery over here into Egypt, try and grab some IPCs from down here against. I think it was just one American artillery piece that was in there, and they failed. Numbers what they should have made that. As it turned out, dice rolls say different, but it left 2 units fewer in Italy. It was a bit of a brave attack by the Americans going into Italy this way. They could have come in this way and attacked the fleet and used some of their landing craft, etc., into there. But they decided just to use the guys in Italy, in France, to attack Italy. It was a narrow squeak there, just 2 American divisions of tanks surviving there. Italy were unlucky there. The Americans certainly got the better of the dice rolls. Italy fell a little bit too easily. A little bit annoyed with that, but that's the way the dice rolls go sometimes. It has now freed up the 2 British destroyers that were in Sea Zone 12 to go that way, plus all the American transport ships are going that way as well, leaving these guys here to mop up down here later on. And I think really now, if we look over here at the Pacific, just to tidy the end of the turn up, the Americans did nothing apart from purchase a couple of big battleships with their expensive purchases to try to get some sort of big protection fleet initially into here. They've landed their bombers after hitting the Japanese factory further back to protect those a little bit. We think that Japan are going to hit Buryatia on turn number 10. And talking of that, turn number 10 will be coming up in video number 4 sometime shortly. Till next time, be cool.